I was bone-tired after a 14-hour day sorting out a major highway project disaster. All I wanted was to drive home, grab a cold beer and collapse on my couch. Instead, my truck nearly went airborne as I hit something hard in the road. The impact rattled my teeth and sent my coffee thermos flying into the passenger window. What the hell? I slammed on the brakes and backed up. There they were, 3 enormous speed bumps installed right across my private driveway. They hadn't been there this morning. Each one was painted bright yellow and stood at least 6 inches high, the kind that force you to crawl over them at 5 miles per hour unless you want to destroy your vehicle's suspension. I sat there, engine idling, staring in disbelief. My driveway is a quarter-mile long and connects directly to the county road. I own it. I maintain it. I plow it in winter. And I certainly never authorized these monstrosities. That's when I noticed the sign hammered into my lawn. Slow down. Children play here. By order of Pine Creek Homeowners Association. My blood pressure shot through the roof. I don't belong to the Pine Creek HOA. My 5-acre property sits adjacent to their development but is completely separate. I bought it specifically because it wasn't part of any HOA. I carefully eased my truck over the remaining bumps and parked. Before I even went inside, I walked back to examine the damage to my property. The speed bumps were professional grade, bolted directly into my asphalt. Whoever installed them had drilled holes and used industrial-strength hardware. This wasn't a quick amateur job. What these HOA people didn't know was that I, Robert Callahan, am the county transportation director. I've spent 20 years overseeing road construction, safety implementations and traffic patterns across 3 counties. I approve permits for everything from crosswalks to highway interchanges. I know every regulation, code, and law about roadways in this state. And I knew with absolute certainty that what they'd done was completely illegal. I bought my home 3 years ago after divorcing my wife of 18 years. I wanted privacy, peace, and no neighbors telling me what color to paint my mailbox. The property was perfect. A small farmhouse on 5 acres with mature trees and a long private driveway. Pine Creek Estates borders my land to the east. It's one of those cookie-cutter luxury developments with identical huge houses crammed onto tiny lots. Their HOA is notorious in county circles for being aggressive and overreaching. When I first moved in, I received a welcome packet from them, despite my property having nothing to do with their association. I returned it with a polite note explaining the mistake. A week later, I got a violation notice for my non-compliant fencing. I ignored it. The notices kept coming, about my barn needing paint, my grass being too tall, the vintage truck I was restoring in my yard being an eyesore. Each time, I filed them in my growing folder labeled Pine Creek Harassment, and went about my business. 6 months ago they escalated. Gerald Watson, the HOA president, came to my door personally. He was a small man with an expensive haircut and the permanent smile of someone who's used to getting his way. "Mr. Callahan, we've been patient, but your continued violations are affecting property values," he said, handing me yet another letter. "Mr. Watson, I appreciate your concern, but my property isn't part of Pine Creek Estates. I don't belong to your HOA." His smile didn't waver. Actually, when Pine Creek was developed, this parcel was included in the master plan. The developer intended all surrounding properties to be part of the community. "Intent doesn't matter," I replied. "My deed and property records are clear. I have no legal obligation to your HOA. We've had our attorney review the situation," he said. "The original covenants from 1998 show this property falls under our jurisdiction. We've been lenient, but that's coming to an end." I closed the door in his face. Then I called the county records office where I have many friends and confirmed what I already knew. His claim was complete fiction. The next day, I sent a certified letter to the HOA board stating clearly that I was not a member, would never be a member, and any further harassment would result in legal action. Things quieted down after that. Until now. I didn't even change out of my work clothes before marching down my driveway to the Pine Creek Estates entrance. Their clubhouse was lit up. Wednesday night HOA meeting. Perfect. I pushed through the doors without knocking. Around 20 people sat in neat rows facing a small podium where Gerald Watson was mid-sentence. He stopped speaking when the door banged open. "Mr. Callahan," he said, recovering quickly. "What a surprise. We don't often see you at our meetings. Who authorized speed bumps on my property?" I asked, my voice eerily calm despite the rage boiling inside me. The room went silent. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Gerald's smile remained fixed. "The board approved safety measures on community access roads last month. There have been complaints about speeding and with so many families with young children." My driveway is not a community access road, I interrupted. It is a private drive on private property. You had no right. A woman in the front row stood up. I recognized her as Karen Mitchell from 2 streets over in the development. My children play near that road and you drive like a maniac. Someone's going to get hurt. Your children shouldn't be playing on my property in the first place, I said. And I've never exceeded 20 miles per hour on my own driveway. We have witness statements saying otherwise, Gerald said. As HOA president, I have a duty to ensure community safety. I took a deep breath. Let me be absolutely clear. I'm not part of your HOA. My property is not under your jurisdiction. You have trespassed and damaged my private property. Those speed bumps will be removed immediately, or I will press charges for vandalism and destruction of private property. Gerald's smile finally faltered. The board acted within its rights. If you have a complaint, you can file it through the proper channels and we'll address it at next month's meeting. That's when I pulled out my county ID badge and placed it on the podium. I am Robert Callahan, Director of Transportation for Westland County. What you've done isn't just trespassing. It's an illegal road modification without permits, proper engineering approval, or traffic study justification. You've created a liability nightmare and potentially endangered public safety. The room erupted in whispers. Gerald's face went pale. Furthermore, I continued, those speed bumps don't meet state safety standards. They're too high, improperly spaced, and would prevent emergency vehicles from reaching my home in a timely manner. Karen Mitchell spoke up again. But the children? If you're concerned about your children's safety, I cut in, keep them off my private property. And if you want speed control in your actual community, there are legal channels to request it. I turned back to Gerald. You have 24 hours to remove those speed bumps and repair my driveway. After that, I'm filing formal charges and reporting this to the county board. I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked out, letting the door slam behind me. The next morning I took the day off work. I called my friend Michael at the sheriff's department and filed an official report about the trespassing and property damage. Then I contacted my lawyer, Sarah Jenkins, who specializes in property disputes. They did what? Sarah asked, incredulous when I explained the situation. Installed 3 industrial speed bumps on my private driveway without permission. That's bold, she said. And incredibly stupid. I gave them 24 hours to remove them. That deadline expires tonight. Document everything, she advised. Take photos, videos, gather any evidence you have that shows your property boundaries. I'll draft a cease and desist letter this morning. After hanging up, I walked my property line, taking photos of the survey stakes still visible from when I bought the place. I documented the speed bumps from every angle and took close-ups of how they'd been drilled into my asphalt. Around noon, a county work truck pulled up. I recognized Ted from the roads department. Hey boss, he called, climbing out. Got a call about some unauthorized speed bumps? Did Gerald Watson call you? I asked, surprised. Ted snorted. No, Commissioner Phillips did. Said to tell you he's deeply concerned about this situation and wants it handled with the utmost discretion. I sighed. Lawrence Phillips was the commissioner for this district and a close friend of several Pine Creek residents. This was getting political. What exactly did he tell you to do? Ted looked uncomfortable. He said to evaluate whether the bumps meet code and could potentially be permitted retroactively. They don't and they can't, I said firmly. This is my private driveway, not a public road or even an HOA road. There's no scenario where these are permissible. Ted nodded. That's what I figured. Want me to remove them now? No, I said after a moment's thought. Let's give the HOA their chance to fix this themselves first. But I appreciate you coming out. After Ted left, I received a text from an unknown number. You're making powerful enemies. Back off while you can. I forwarded it to both Sarah and Michael, adding it to my growing evidence file. By sunset, no one from the HOA had shown up. My 24-hour deadline passed. They'd made their choice. Early the next morning, I was awakened by the sound of voices on my property. I looked out the window to see Gerald Watson standing near the first speed bump with 2 men in work clothes. I threw on a robe and went outside. Finally decided to fix your mistake? I called as I approached. Gerald turned, his face tight. We're evaluating the situation. The situation is simple. You illegally installed these on my property. Now you need to remove them. One of the workers spoke up. Sir, we're actually here to add reflective paint and warning signs. Mr. Watson says there have been complaints about visibility at night. I stared in disbelief. You're not adding anything. You're removing these immediately. Mr. Callahan, Gerald said, the board has consulted with our attorney. We believe we're within our rights under the original property covenant. If you continue to be difficult, we'll have no choice but to pursue further action. What further action? I asked. The board has voted to place a lien on your property for unpaid HOA dues and accumulated fines dating back to when you purchased this home. I actually laughed. Good luck with that. Now get off my property before I have you arrested for trespassing. The workers looked uncertainly between Gerald and me. We have work authorized by the Homeowners Association, Gerald told them. Proceed as planned. Something inside me snapped. I pulled out my phone and called Michael at the sheriff's department. I need deputies at my property immediately. I have trespassers who are refusing to leave and attempting to further damage my property. While waiting for the deputies, I blocked the workers' access to the speed bumps. Gerald made a show of taking photos of me interfering and threatened to add it to their case file. 20 minutes later, 2 sheriff's deputies arrived. I recognized Deputy Rodriguez, who'd taken my report yesterday. These men are trespassing on my property, I explained. I've asked them to leave and they've refused. Gerald immediately stepped forward with a folder. I have documentation showing this property falls under Pine Creek HOA jurisdiction. We're conducting authorized maintenance. Deputy Rodriguez reviewed Gerald's paperwork, then asked to see my property deed. I retrieved it from inside, along with the country assessor's documents clearly showing my property boundaries. After reviewing both, Rodriguez addressed Gerald. Mr. Watson, Mr. Callahan's documentation appears to be in order. There's no indication this property is part of your HOA. The original covenants, Gerald began, aren't reflected in the current property records, Rodriguez interrupted. This appears to be a civil matter regarding property rights, but until that's resolved in court, you don't have permission to be here. I'm going to have to ask you and your workers to leave. Gerald's face flushed red. This isn't over, Callahan, he muttered as he and the workers returned to their vehicles. After they left, I thanked the deputies and went back inside to call Sarah. This had gone far enough. I want to file for an emergency injunction, I told her. And I want to sue them for everything they've done. I was hoping you'd say that, Sarah replied. I've already started preparing the paperwork. But something was bothering me about Gerald's confidence. He kept referencing original covenants with absolute certainty. I decided to do some digging of my own. As County Transportation Director, I have access to historical property records and development plans. I spent my lunch break the next day combing through the original Pine Creek Estates documents from the late 1990s. What I found was interesting but not what Gerald claimed. When the development was first proposed, the developer had indeed tried to include my parcel. However, the then-owner had successfully fought the inclusion, and the final approved plans explicitly excluded this property. But I discovered something else. The real reason the HOA wanted control of my driveway. The original Pine Creek plans included a second entrance/exit on the west side, connecting to Hillcrest Road. That exit was never built. Current county regulations required developments of Pine Creek size to have at least 2 access points for emergency vehicles. They'd been operating with a variance due to geographical limitations. But the county was reviewing all such variances next month, and Pine Creeks might not be renewed due to the growth in the number of homes. My property, specifically my driveway, offered the perfect solution. If they could claim jurisdiction, they could connect a new road through the narrow strip of my land that bordered county property, creating their required second exit without having to demolish any existing homes in their development. It was a land grab, pure and simple. I pulled up the HOA board meeting minutes for the past year, which were required to be publicly accessible. Sure enough, 6 months ago, right around when Gerald had first approached me, they had discussed exploring options for secondary access compliance and reviewing historical property boundaries. Armed with this information, I met Sarah at her office that evening. They want to build a road through my property, I explained, showing her my findings. She whistled. That's a much bigger issue than some speed bumps. No wonder they've been so aggressive. Can they actually do this? I asked. Not legally, no. Your property rights are clear. But they might try to pressure the county commissioners to exercise eminent domain if they can argue it's a public safety issue. Over my dead body, I muttered. Sarah gave me a sympathetic look. Let's make sure it doesn't come to that. Here's what we're going to do. The next day was the monthly County Transportation Committee meeting. As director, I usually chaired these meetings, but today I had a different role in mind. I arrived early and spoke with my deputy director, explaining that I would be recusing myself from part of the meeting due to a personal matter. Then I took a seat in the audience section. Commissioner Phillips looked surprised to see me there rather than at the front table. He approached before the meeting began. "Robert, is everything all right? I heard there was some trouble with Pine Creek." "Just a misunderstanding," I said evenly. "One I plan to clear up today." He nodded uncertainly and took his seat at the commission table. When the meeting reached the public comment section, I stood and approached the podium. "My name is Robert Callahan. I'm speaking today as a private citizen and property owner, not in my capacity as transportation director." I outlined the situation clearly: the illegal installation of speed bumps on my private property, the harassment by the HOA, and their apparent plan to create a secondary access road through my land. "I've discovered that Pine Creek Estates has been operating with an emergency access variance that may not meet current safety standards," I continued. "While I sympathize with their predicament, their solution cannot involve the illegal seizure or use of my private property." Commissioner Phillips interrupted. "Mr. Callahan, this sounds like a private dispute that doesn't need to take up the committee's time." "With respect, Commissioner, it became a county matter when Pine Creek illegally modified a roadway without permits and is potentially seeking to use political influence to seize private property." Murmurs spread through the room. I noticed several reporters scribbling notes. "Furthermore," I added, "I've prepared a report on all emergency access variances currently in effect in the county, highlighting those that no longer meet updated safety standards." I handed copies to the clerk to distribute. As transportation director, I have a duty to ensure all developments are compliant with current regulations, regardless of personal conflicts. The committee members flipped through my report in uncomfortable silence. "My recommendation," I concluded, "is that the committee direct Pine Creek Estates to present a compliance plan that does not involve my property, and that all illegal modifications to my driveway be removed immediately at their expense." I returned to my seat as Commissioner Phillips conferred urgently with other committee members. After the meeting, Sarah was waiting outside, grinning widely. "You should have seen Gerald Watson's face when the committee unanimously voted to require Pine Creek to remove the speed bumps and present a new access plan within 30 days, she said. He looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. "It's not over," I warned her. "They'll try something else." "Let them try," she said. "I filed our lawsuit this morning. They're being served as we speak: trespassing, property damage, harassment, and attempted fraud through false claims of HOA jurisdiction." The speed bumps were removed the next day by a county crew. Commissioner Phillips had ordered the work done immediately, likely hoping to minimize political damage now that the issue was public. 2 weeks later, Gerald Watson resigned as HOA president. The local paper ran a small story about personal reasons, but the timing wasn't coincidental. My lawsuit proceeded, despite the new HOA board's attempts to settle quietly. I refused their initial offers. I wanted my day in court to ensure this never happened again. When we finally had our hearing, the judge was unimpressed with Pine Creek's arguments. Their lawyer tried to argue that the speed bumps were installed in good faith, based on safety concerns. Good faith would have involved asking permission from the property owner, the judge noted dryly. Or at minimum, verifying your legal right to modify the property, which you did not have. The court ruled entirely in my favor, awarding damages for the driveway repairs, legal fees, and a significant sum for harassment and emotional distress. More importantly, the judge issued a permanent injunction prohibiting Pine Creek HOA from entering my property or claiming any jurisdiction over it. As for their emergency access problem, they eventually purchased a small strip of land on their northern boundary from a willing seller and constructed a proper second entrance there, at considerable expense. One evening about a month after the court ruling, I was relaxing on my porch when a car I didn't recognize pulled into my driveway. A woman got out, Karen Mitchell, the one who had complained about her children playing near my speeding. She approached hesitantly. "Mr. Callahan, I owe you an apology." I waited silently. "I never actually saw you speeding," she admitted. "Gerald told us to report it if we wanted to get the secondary access road approved. He said it was for everyone's safety." She looked genuinely remorseful. "I'm sorry I lied." I considered her for a long moment. "Apology accepted. Would you like a beer?" She looked surprised, then smiled. "Actually, yes." We sat on my porch watching the sunset. Karen explained how Gerald had manipulated the HOA board for years, convincing them that aggressive tactics were the only way to protect their property values. "Most of us aren't bad people," she said. We just got caught up in his vision of perfect community control. Communities aren't built through control, I replied. They're built through respect. After she left, I sat thinking about the irony of it all. The HOA had installed speed bumps on my private road, not knowing I was the transportation director who knew every regulation they were violating. Their overreach had cost them financially, damaged their reputation, and ultimately forced them to find a legitimate solution to their access problem. All they had to do was ask nicely in the first place. I might even have helped them find a proper solution. It was literally my job after all. Instead, they chose bullying and deception, and learned a hard lesson about property rights and the limits of HOA power. As for me, I still drive a cautious 20 miles per hour down my driveway. Not because anyone is forcing me to slow down, but because it's the right thing to do. And that makes all the difference.